And I think that really is part of the plan that people don't think about is the contingencies. What if things don't go according to plan? And the analogy that popped into my head, unfortunately, based upon life experiences. Okay, so we're here in Kentucky. You've decided you're going to drive to California. Doing it with a plan is like, okay, so here's my destination. And I've got my GPS locked out, or locked in, whatever you want to call it. So I know which roads I need to stay on. When it turns out there's construction or an accident or something like that, the GPS tells me how to route around that to be efficient. It's not going to go exactly the way that it was when you laid it out, but it's still going to be the efficient way, as opposed to not having a plan, which is let's drive west until we hit water and pray. The point is that if there's no plan, your likelihood of actually getting to your goal is pretty slim because there's just so many things that can go wrong.
It's interesting, too, because so many people lead with investments. And once again, I've said this before, and I'll say it again, investments are important. So I don't want to make any misunderstanding.
It's part of the puzzle.
It's part of the puzzle. But the investment, you can't have an investment conversation until the income plan is laid out and complete. Because you have to derive your income from your investments, right? And so, or whatever other products you've got, right, from your overall portfolio. Until we know what we're working with and what your income needs to look like, we can't make any recommendations on an investment plan until we know when you need access to those investments, okay? And we say this all the time. Every dollar in your portfolio has a job. There is a purpose to money, okay? What is the purpose of money? The purpose of money is to what? Spend it.
Right.
Enjoy it. Go do something with it, right? The reason we work, the reason we save all this money is so we have money in retirement to go do what? Live. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of the day you're listening to this. We appreciate you joining us here for another episode of the Retirement Planning Happy Hour. Eric Douglas, Chris Vaughn, Family Wealth Planning Partners. Today we have kind of a little bit of an all-encompassing episode based upon some stories that we've recently come up against that we have over the last few weeks that have accumulated that kind of illustrate, let's say, the value of a financial planner and what it is that we actually do, right?
Yeah, there you go.
And why we do is so important and how it affects specifically some of our clients' lives. Juxtaposed against, what some prospects have come in that we've had come in the door recently,
right?
Thinking one thing about what we do and then coming to a realization that what we actually do is quite a bit different than what they were expecting or what they had in mind based upon what, traditional industry standards are for people like us in our industry. So that's kind of the little bit of an introduction to the topic for today. Mm-hmm. Well, why don't you introduce the bourbon?
So, I can't introduce the bourbon because it's not bourbon this week.
There we go.
This is a whiskey. This is actually from Bardstown Bourbon Company. But it is a whiskey, and the reason why it is a whiskey and not a bourbon, right off the top of it, just looking at it, it is less than 51% corn. So that's a deal breaker.
Uh-oh.
So what this one is, and I will tell you right now, this one is readily available in most decent-sized liquor stores. It is also a little pricey. Bardstown stuff tends to be that way. They are a sourcing distillery right down in Bardstown. Really neat tour. I've been down there. It is well worth going to see. They do all kinds of crazy stuff. And they're one of the few places I've seen that the crazier they get, the better it gets. Usually that's a bad thing, but not with them.
Well, they are definitely a little pricey, which is part of the reason why we were talking about this before. I've not really had many Bardstown products. Right. I think I've had one, maybe two.
And there's so many of them out there.
And they're good, but it's not something that really pops up on my radar on a regular basis. So I've just I'm not very familiar with their lineup, let's say.
Well, okay, so first of all, the stuff that they actually put their name on is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But whether you're aware of it or not,
probably
you're very familiar with a lot of things they make because they are a sourcing distillery.
Sure.
And they don't advertise the other bourbons that they actually produce. But anyway, this particular one, I will tell you that this is about a $160 bottle if you go out and buy it today. I did not pay that much for it, but I've also had this for, a year and a half, 2 years. So what they've done is they've taken a blend, and Bardstown does a really good job on the side of their label. They will tell you all the different whiskeys that they used, right? So this one is a 90% blend, or excuse me, it's 90% whiskey that was produced in Indiana. that's interesting because Bardstown is not in Indiana, but MGP, another big sourcer, is. It's 7 years old, and it is 45% corn, so there's your deal breaker. 51% rye, so this is probably going to have a very, very spicy note to it. And then 4% malted barley. They then blend that 10% Tennessee whiskey that is 17 years old, so you should pick up some oak and stuff like that. 84% corn, 8% rye, 8% malted barley, if I'm reading that correctly. And then they finish this, and this is what's special about this one, in Foursquare rum. So if you know anything about rum, Foursquare is one of your higher-end rum distilleries. I don't know that much about it.
I'm not a rum guy. I don't know.
I'm a rum guy when I'm on vacation in the Caribbean, when in Rome, or in this case, when in the Caribbean.
I haven't been a rum guy since a bad night at Captain Morgan's in college. So
there is something to be said, and I think we've all had that one. There is something to be said for having a rum-based frozen drink with an umbrella in it.
Sure.
When you are in 85 degrees and the Caribbean and everybody else is snowed in.
And you can't taste the rum in the drink.
And that's about the only time that I'm a rum guy too. But this is something different, so I thought we would bring it in, enjoy.
It's definitely a little bit different. Yep.
If you like what we have to say about the bourbon, like I said, most big box bourbon stores, spirits stores, liquor stores, are going to have at least a bottle or two of this. And if they don't, they'll probably get it, right? Yeah. So it's relatively easy to find if you're willing to pay the price for it.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
You said, what, $160?
Yeah, this is about $160. So this one's a pricey one. Like I said, I got it cheaper. I don't think it's $160 good. Right, so I'm probably not going to go buy another one.
So
but we'll see.
Just to come back to something you said earlier, I think you said you got this bottle, what, a year and a half, 2 years ago?
Yeah, something like that.
That's not much you've drank over there.
I'm pretty sure it's been sitting since I opened it, which I believe was at a bourbon event where you're trying to have different things.
So
that's probably the last time I opened it.
Yep. So. Well, kind of onto the topic, right?
All right.
Topic at hand. So when we started talking about the ideas for today's episode, you had a story that you had come up against, and then it just so happened we started talking. I was like, actually, this is what happened to me.
Got several stories.
This is what's happened to me over the last couple of weeks, and I had a couple things that pop up. So, you go ahead and lead with what kind of originated the idea today.
So, and we did an episode, I don't know, a few months back on why we hate the term financial advisor, and it's because it's so generic. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what happened. So last weekend, I was at a big party with a lot of people that live out in our part of town, and a couple that I haven't seen in probably a year and a half, but I've known him since we were 6 years old. We grew up out in J-Town together. So, we get to chatting, and he says, I'm actually getting ready to call you here pretty soon. Okay, obviously referring to business. I said, oh, really? What's happened? He said, well, I'm going to come into a little bit of money. Okay. He didn't define what a little bit is, but I would assume it's a nice chunk. He said, well, something's happened. And I said, I hope it's not bad. And he said, no, it's all good. Okay. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. He must have named 7 or 8 different things. Mm-hmm. Here's what he's going to do when he gets the money, with the money. And then with what's left,
sure,
he's going to give me a call and say, make it bigger. And I wanted to say so bad, you have no idea what I do for a living, do you? It's like, I think what most people think, and I know this was clear in this case, is that we are investment advisors.
Managers,
right?
Investment managers.
Or managers.
Try to be more specific.
The technical frame is investment advisor, but yeah, we're investment managers, right? And we do that, but that's only part of it. And I've got an example of how I kind of figure the different pieces into it that I'll go over in a minute. That's a football analogy.
Which I loved your analogy, and I had not heard it before, and I thought it was great.
But before I do that, I want you to talk about a couple of the ones that you've had here in the last week or so.
It's interesting because you talked about a new client, or a buddy of yours, actually. We had a new client that came in, and they, unfortunately, Her father had passed away, but she came into a little bit of money, and she received a little bit of an inheritance, didn't know what to do with it. But to your point, when she came in, she was talking immediately about, well, I need to buy a new car. I need to pay off this credit card. I need to do some,
Sure.
Not that any of those things are necessarily bad in and of themselves. And she said, then I'm going to have some money left over to invest.
There it is.
And that's why she's in. And she didn't know what she was inheriting. She didn't know the tax ramifications of what she was inheriting. So we had to walk through all those different things. And, okay, well, if you're trying to do this, maybe you should do it from this bucket instead of that one, because she didn't really know how best to figure out from a tax perspective what the best answer was going to be. But to your point, it was the exact same conversation. She's like, well, I'm going to have some money left over after spending a certain amount of money, and I don't know what to do with it, basically. And so she sat down, and I started going through some of the questions, and none of the questions were pertaining to the investments themselves necessarily. It was all about, and I don't think she was very prepared for. Actually, I know for a fact she was not prepared for this because she told me she was not prepared. But she was going, I was asking her questions about her income and, her job and her plans, short-term goals. But if she had any, things that she needed to spend money on the next 5 years, 10 years, was she trying to buy a house? Was she all these different things? And like, oh, you're married? Okay, well, tell me about your husband. What's his income? What does he do? How involved is he, right? And going through all these different things, and she just was very, very clearly not prepared. She was like, I have this money. She was ready to just, here's the statements and do something with it. That was her mentality walking in the door. Now, she was very pleasantly surprised when we kind of started going through the process, and she realized, oh, this isn't what I was expecting, but I like it, and I'm happy I came here. But she had one thing in mind because she'd never worked with anyone before, and she just kind of thought we were all the same. And actually what she was doing was she was comparing in her mind. Her dad was in another state, and that was another reason she was looking for someone here locally because she didn't really like who her dad was using. Right. And I'm not going to say the company, but it's a big box company. You see them everywhere, all over the country. But in her mind, everyone was like them. And that was basically her baseline, right? That was the baseline assumption for what someone in our industry does. And she did not have necessarily a very good experience with that individual who had kind of talked down to her a little bit and didn't really incorporate her into much of a planning conversation, right? And so she had felt, I don't want to say betrayed, but she just did not have a really good experience with this individual. Right. And so that's why, because based on her conversations with the previous individual where everything was based around investments, she was ready to come into our office talking about one thing, and she was very surprised when we were talking about 5 other things before we started talking about the one thing. And so that is similar. It sounds like a very similar experience to what you were having with your buddy. Right.
And I had another, a new client come in this week, very similar thing, had no idea what planning was, had this preconceived notion of what an advisor actually does. They manage money, right? And the purpose of money is to get it bigger, right? Yeah. Because that's all people know. So I'll go on with the analogy here real quick, and I like to use this one, is think about a football team, right? I'm a football junkie. I love it. God help me. And I'm a college fan, which it's coming up on Thanksgiving, which means I'm loving it right now, but I'm dreading it because it's almost over, right? The biggest problem is it's a short season. But the reason I love the game is because it is more like real life, because of the complexity. That's what I like. So the analogy that I use is your investment advisor, and I'm using that phrase technically. The investment advisor, the investment manager, their job is like the running back if they're a conservative manager. What's a running back's job? Get 4 yards. That's their job. If they can get 4 yards every single play, they will win every single game.
Don't lose yards.
Yeah, so don't go backwards, right? If you get less than 4 yards, in many cases that's bad. If you get more than 4 yards, great, but you weren't trying to get more than 4 yards, right? You're trying to move the chains.
First and 10, you're trying to move it, and you're trying to set up a second and 6.
Exactly. Just get a new first down and just keep driving. That's their job, okay? Now, the more aggressive investment advisor is more like the wide receiver. And I can say this about wide receivers because when I was young, I played a little wide receiver. I didn't say I was very good, but I played a little wide receiver.
I didn't ask.
But they're the glory hound, right? They're not supposed to catch the ball 30 times a game. They're supposed to catch it 3 or 4, but they're supposed to get 20, 30, 40 yards when they do it. That's the big play, right? So the investment advisor is like that. The financial planner really, and I use the analogy that they're the quarterback, but they're not really the quarterback. They're the coach, right? They're the coach that's determining the plays. Who needs to get the ball, right? How does that win the game one play at a time, right? And then the quarterback is actually executing that, getting the ball to the right place. And I could throw in, theoretically, there's 6 different parts to financial planning, and I can put them all in here. Like the offensive line, that's insurance. That's what's protecting your team. I could keep going down that. But you know what the client is? They're the owner or the athletic director if you're a college fan. Their job is to get wins. That's what they worry about, right? So instead of worrying about all the little nuances, their job is to hire the right people and then let them go play the game and win the games. I had a couple of things come up this week. You and I both went to a symposium, which we do. That's how we learn. Yep. We went out to a dinner with a fairly big company, and they were presenting new ideas. Okay, great. I'm all about learning new stuff.
Good ideas,
right? And they were good ideas. But we were in a room full of other advisors who are very clearly not financial planners in the way that we would define it. The questions that everybody was asking were all about ways to make people's money bigger or ways to not lose people's money. That was it. There were no other considerations on any of these questions. And it's like, I'm sitting here going, okay, how is that tool that they're showing us, how could that tool be used in a plan, right? Is this a better tight end than what I've got, to go back to that analogy? Or is it a different type of player that I can use? They're looking at it very, very strictly down that tunnel vision of make people's money bigger and don't lose money, right? And that's only part of it. Go back to another client that I had come in earlier this week that we've been working together for several years. They are retired. They are in their 50s and retired, which is unusually difficult to do.
Sure.
But in their situation, we made it work. I think the meeting lasted an hour and 15 minutes. If we spent 10 minutes talking about their plan, I think I'd be exaggerating, right? And that's not what they wanted to talk about. We talked about the vacations that they've been on and the things that they're doing to their house, and they brought their brand new grandbaby with them, and they were loving being grandparents.
Well, to be clear, you were talking about the plan,
right?
But you
we
weren't
were talking about the part that's fun.
You
right?
weren't talking about the planning. You were talking about the actual implementation of the plan. They were doing life.
All we did, and that's a great turn of phrase there, they were out doing their life. That's what they wanted to do. He said to me, is everything good? He didn't say, what kind of return on my investment am I getting or anything like that, which is what too many people are trained to ask. He said, are we doing good? I pulled the numbers up. I was prepared for it. And I said, everything is exactly where it's supposed to be, right? The margins for error are still there. It's designed for you to go out and do the things that you're doing and not be worried about this part. And he went, great. And we moved on, and we got to talking about a cruise that they're getting ready to go on. It was that kind of conversation. And quite frankly, when you've got a good plan, those are the kind of conversations that happen more often than not. Yeah.
So it's interesting. So I've got two different situations. Unfortunately, they both start out the same way, where I had a client lose a job.
Yeah.
Now, these are 2 completely different clients in 2 completely different stations of life. One was planning to retire next year, actually. Right. His company got bought out, got a little bit of a surprise notice, and his retirement started just a little bit early. Another one, actually very same scenario. His company got bought out. He was a pretty well-paid employee. He ended up losing his job. That's, tough on anyone. It was a very tough situation. What's interesting about both of these cases is because I think both of these situations do a fantastic job of highlighting what we do and why we can be very valuable to clients. And neither one of these stories I'm going to lead with returns, although those are definitely, they've been pretty good too, right? So, market's been up, and, they've been certainly happy with that. But the reason we became valuable in both of these situations was because it's an illustration of the point that what do we say so very often when we talk to clients? The time to start thinking about putting the plan together is not when you need one. The time to start putting the plan together is before you need one, right? You don't plan because now all of a sudden something happened and now you have to. You plan before something happens so you don't have to be stuck planning in the moment, right? So you can prepare for the moment, so you can prepare the inevitabilities that life throws at you, the curveballs that life throws at you. You are prepared for those. And in both of these situations, both of these clients were fully prepared for curveballs that they were not expecting. When I walked into my meeting this week with the older gentleman who was preparing for retirement next year, I was not prepared for the first thing to come out of his mouth was, well, I retired today. Okay.
All right. Thanks for the heads up.
Talk to me about what happened. He's like, well, I lost my job. Like when? Oh, this week. Oh, okay. Well, this was a timely meeting. It just happened. This was on the calendar for weeks, right? But it just so happened that he walked in the door. His plans immediately changed in the conversation that I was set to have. Okay, throw that in the wayside, right? We're not doing a regular review meeting at this point. We're doing a brand new retirement prep meeting.
We are modifying things.
Which is great, is great. And, of course, we were ready. But, you pull up the plan. We go through all the different variables and all the different, things that we need to consider. Not once do we talk about performance. Now, keep in mind, all of our clients know their performance well before they come in the door because of, all the online tools and all the things that we give them access to, the performance management stuff, right? So aside from the fact that we make it sound like it's not important, it is very important, don't misunderstand, but it's not the end-all, be-all. And part of the reason we don't talk about it much is because clients already know what it is. Aside from that, the entire conversation was, okay, well, do I need to go back to work? Should I go back to work? Should I file for Social Security? Should I wait to file for Social Security? The wife is still working. Okay, so we need to figure that out. But, okay, she was also planning to retire next year. So now her concern was, do I need to work longer than I was planning on? Do I need to sell a car? They had 2 cars with 2 car payments. Should we sell a car? Should we consolidate to 1 car? Should we sell a car and get a lower cost car? They have a vacation home that they rent out as an Airbnb as well. Should we sell the Airbnb, right? Should we sell the cabin? All these different things have absolutely zero to do with the performance of their investments. And so many people in our industry think that, I have to focus on performance. That's the main thing that's important. Nope.
That's because they think that's what everybody is most concerned with.
Exactly. And it is important. I don't want to discount it, but that was not anything that was anywhere close to the top of their mind when they walked in to talk to me about the fact that the husband lost the job unexpectedly, very unexpectedly. And they were afraid that it was going to derail their plans for retirement next year. So, okay, great. Well, we've done the planning. We've prepared for this type of an eventuality, right? We were already going to have you retiring. Let's just reevaluate and go through some of the numbers again and see how well prepared you are. And whether or not you can stay retired or whether or not you need to go back to work. If you did go back to work, maybe instead of working full-time, would you want to go back maybe part-time? Do you still like work? You're still, because he's relatively young, right? They were retiring in their early 60s. They're in good shape. He takes care of himself. Both his parents are still around, doing well, right? So he's like, yeah, actually, I liked working. I wasn't necessarily prepared to quit yet, but I don't mind retiring. But so we're still working out some of those questions, but we showed him, okay, well, if you did this is the result. If you do that, this is going to be the result, right? And so we're walking through all the different options that he has available to him now. Because in all honesty, that's what it is. He has a new lifestyle ahead of him. And he's not fully aware of what that lifestyle is going to look like because he was not prepared to lose his job so suddenly. But now he has a lot of different things to consider. And all the different things that he was considering, I showed him through our planning what the results of those decisions might be as it relates to their preparedness or readiness, I should say, for retirement. Right. So if he doesn't go back to work and they sell the vacation home, if he continues to work and also sells the vacation home, if he sells the vacation home and doesn't, all these different things, all these different variables, right? And they left the meeting and they're like, okay, so all in all, they felt a lot better because we had already done the planning. Their risk was already assessed in a way in their portfolio that allowed them to feel comfortable right? Knowing that their income is going to be ready for them whenever they were retired a year from now, right? But okay, we moved it up a little bit, but the plan doesn't change. They're ready to go because we have been doing the planning with them over the last couple of years. They walked out of that meeting completely fine. He just lost his job this week. He's good. He's fine. And he's good to go. And he's good to go.
And I think that really is part of the plan that people don't think about is the contingencies. What if things don't go according to plan? And the analogy that popped into my head, unfortunately, based upon life experiences, is, okay, so we're here in Kentucky. You've decided you're going to drive to California. Doing it with a plan is like, okay, so here's my destination. And I've got my GPS locked out, or locked in, whatever you want to call it. So I know which roads I need to stay on. When it turns out there's construction or an accident or something like that, the GPS tells me how to route around that to be efficient. It's not going to go exactly the way that it was when you laid it out. But it's still going to be the efficient way, as opposed to not having a plan, which is let's drive west until we hit water and pray that we actually get there. And that's a true story, by the way, except it was east. We made it to Moorhead 2 hours. We had to turn around and come back. But the point is, if there's no plan, your likelihood of actually getting to your goal is pretty slim because there's just so many things that can go wrong. So let's talk about what all goes into a plan. And we've done individual podcasts on every one of these categories, in some cases more than once. So as we talk about these, feel free to go back and look at the other podcasts, or listen to them, I should say, where we kind of go down the rabbit hole on them. So there are 6 major categories that we have to deal with when dealing with a financial plan. So those are taxation, because when we're teaching this in a workshop, we always start off with what's the single biggest expense you're going to have in retirement, and we get healthcare a lot. Right? We get that one more than anything else.
Grandkids.
Grandkids, yeah. We need to set aside a budget for them, right? But the answer is always taxation. If you do not have a plan of attack on how to deal with the taxation between now and the time you retire, and from retirement until you're gone, and after you're gone, whatever's left is going to move around. How do we deal with the taxation on that and pay the least amount that we can over our remaining lifetime? Right? So that's a major category. It doesn't stop. They change the rules on us pretty much every year, right? That's a normal thing. Just last week, they came out with the new rules for contribution limits for next year. That's an ongoing thing.
On top of the big, beautiful bill.
On top of so we already had a major change this year, or in some cases, a major continuation of what we had that was going to change. So that's an ongoing battle. Then you have healthcare. Okay. Fact, as you get older, you are likely to need more and more health care. And the way that you do that in retirement is totally different than the way that you did it in your 30s, right? So how do we navigate all of those things and all of those pitfalls? So healthcare in itself is a major category, and you can subdivide that one. Most people think I'm talking about Medicare. Well, that's a big part of it. But what about the Medicare supplements and Medicare Advantages and the long-term cares and all of that other stuff? That all falls into that health care category. So that's number 2.
Long-term care scares a lot of folks. I've had,
and it should. I mean, I get why that's scary if you've been through experiences. That told you that new client that came in the other day. She was thinking investment advice, and one of the concerns was, Mom lived a very long life. And she spent 17 years in assisted living and skilled care, which is way, way beyond the averages. Wow. Right? Yeah. So she has a genuine concern. She's got longevity in her family, but that longevity is not, completely solo longevity. So, that's a concern. That's a big one. The third one is estate. If you've done everything else correctly, doesn't matter how long you live, there's going to be something left over, right? How do you want to address that? What's important to you? Most people say, well, I'll just leave it all to my kids. Yeah, but how do you want to leave it to your kids? What's your family dynamic?
You want to make sure it gets to your kids.
Right? How do we make sure it gets to your kids and not to somebody else or to a creditor or to the government or whatever? So, that's a major consideration. And I can go back to that football analogy and show you where each one of these fit. How about insurance? Where does insurance fit into this? Insurance is always a defensive strategy. But it's amazing to me the number of people that we meet with that the insurance that they have is not what they should have. I very rarely see somebody who is correctly insured. They are usually overly insured or underinsured.
Far more underinsured.
Far more underinsured, especially with homeowners and auto, right? And we've done a podcast on that. I'm always amazed by the people who come in and they're 65, 70 years old, and it's very important to them to keep a term life insurance policy in force. And it's like, but why? Why is this important to you? What is it actually going to do? What's it going to fix? What problem is it going to solve? Right?
Annuities are not life insurance, by the way.
Correct. They are a form of insurance.
It's a life insurance product, but
right.
all too often they get lumped into the life insurance category.
Yep.
So I hear that one from time to time, but continue.
Okay.
Not to interrupt.
So, no, please. But I mean, insurance is a major category that frequently gets left out. And I've said this many times, and I'll keep saying it. The biggest potential problem in most good financial plans that I've seen or worked on is auto coverage, because of the potential for a car accident that is not your fault, that is prohibitively expensive by somebody who is not covered, right? Because the number of uninsured drivers out there is truly mesmerizing. You can't get blood from a turnip. People who say you're going to sue people, you can sue poor people all you want to, but when you're dealing with an uninsured driver, you are not dealing with somebody who's a billionaire. Right? It doesn't work that way.
What you think is not a lot of money is.
So anyway, that's that one. The fifth category would be the investment part. That's the part that people tend to latch onto and think that's a financial plan. How many times have we seen somebody come in and they say, "Oh, I have a plan." Right? I've got a financial plan. I've been working with a guy, or I worked with a guy a few years back and he gave me a plan. Are you about to hand me that plan? Yes, here it is, and it's printed out.
Or even
static.
Or even worse than that, they think their financial plan should be based upon their emotional response to risk.
Oh yeah.
And I've had that was a new client this week as well. His financial plan was based upon how he felt about the markets and the fact that he had retired a couple of years ago. And so, because conventional wisdom said that he was supposed to go conservative, he went very conservative.
Yeah.
Potato, it's done now. I can't do much to fix it, right? But
you know what?
But your plan, his plan was based on his emotional response to risk.
So he was all conservative. What's a conservative investment advisor? That's a running back. His job's to get 4 yards. Well, if you know anything about football, if they know you're going to run the ball every time, they're going to load the box up and you are not going to be able to run the ball.
Yep.
You have to throw the ball to get the defense to open up a little bit, right? So, that's the reason I use that analogy.
This isn't the old school SEC. We got to throw the ball now.
We got to throw the ball.
You got to put some points on the board.
So I think this is the category that people think their entire financial plan falls into the investment category. That is one of the categories. And I promise you, if you get that one perfect, but you don't do the other ones, you didn't get that one perfect. It's going to fall apart. It's a matter of when, right? And that's, oh my gosh, you were talking about people come in who their plan is based on emotion. My personal favorite is the ones who come in and say, yes, I've got a plan. I'm going to show it to you. And they hand you a statement.
Well, yeah, either
and
that or a
literally
spreadsheet.
It's just a statement or a spreadsheet. That one's great. I've had that one many times. And I've got a neighbor of mine that I'm friends with. He came up to my house one time and he said, I want to go over financial planning. Cool. Right. He actually brought a bottle of bourbon and we sat out there watching baseball.
Well, that's how you start a good conversation.
Right? It's a great conversation. And he laid out exactly how his financial plan was going to work. And what he was looking for was for me to approve it.
Yeah.
That was pretty obvious. And it's like, okay, it might work. I'm not going to tell you it will. I'm not going to tell you it won't. I'm going to tell you there are so many variables in your plan that you have no control of. That's not what he wanted to hear, right? But
he was fishing for some free advice.
His head was all in the investment space, right? He wasn't thinking about all the other spaces, which are all places where things can go wrong, right? Okay, so the last category, arguably, no, it's not even arguably, it is the most important piece.
Yes.
Right? Is the income piece. Where does your income come from?
Correct.
Right? And there's a lot of sources, and people will get into the investment side and think, well, the investments are going to pay 6% or 4% per year. You know,
God.
Go back to that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm earning dividends on my investments, and that's how I get my income.
That's not an income plan.
That's not an income
right?
plan. Yeah.
I mean, it is a form of income, but it's not a plan, right? The investment plan is basically, here's all the different sources that you either get money from, or you can get money from, or you will get money from. So that's going to be, up until the day you retire, that's your actual income, your wages, your salary, whatever. That's at some point in time, it's Social Security, right? And that's a huge decision on when you do it. And how many times have we had people come in and say, I'm going to file Social Security at this age because the number that I will get will pay these bills.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
That's not a financial plan that I would write, But anyway, Social Security is a part of it. Some people still have pensions. Here in the Louisville area, there's a lot of places that still offer old school defined benefit plans, otherwise known as a pension. I think in a lot of other places, you just don't see them that much anymore. And they are going away for a lot of reasons.
You don't see them that much in Louisville either, but there are a couple companies, if you're of age, where you've been employed, 30 years.
Right. And a lot of those big companies, their employees who have been there for 20, 30 years, they have it.
They've been grandfathered in.
Right, they're grandfathered. The employees who are in their 20s and 30s, they're not going to have access.
Oh, no.
You've got, you mentioned the annuity word. Okay, so an income annuity, that's a specific type. That can be another source of income. Then you've got all the different savings that you have, which vary in their tax consequences. So the income plan is, I think, absolutely the most important part, and it's the part you have to calculate first. Yep. So when you're developing a financial plan, step number one is not, I need to go get a will. No, that's the estate plan. We're going to get to that. That's important.
But you need to make sure you maintain an estate, because we have to create an income plan that's going to live that's not going to outlive
Correct.
you, right?
So it's just,
or that is going to outlive you. I'm sorry.
Right. Yes. Yeah. You said that right. The income part is the part that people put the least amount of work into when they're doing this themselves. And yet it's the single most important part, because ultimately, if you don't have enough money to go live the lifestyle that you want to live, then you failed, right? If you're going, well, I retired, I got it done, but now we can only live at a certain level, and that's not what we wanted. Well, then you did it wrong, right? I love the phrase that you say all the time. You shouldn't retire from a job. You should retire to something.
I said it this morning.
Yeah, I couldn't say it better. That plan is, what does your life look like? If you are thinking about retiring just because you're tired of working, you're not going to have a happy retirement. You might have a successful one, but it's not going to be a happy one, right? So,
yeah, it's interesting too, because so many people lead with investments. And once again, I've said this before, and I'll say it again: investments are important. So I don't want to make any misunderstanding.
It's part of the puzzle.
It's part of the puzzle. But the investment, you can't have an investment conversation until the income plan is laid out and complete. Because you have to derive your income from your investments, right? And so, or whatever other products you've got, right, from your overall portfolio. Until we know what we're working with and what your income needs to look like, we can't make any recommendations on an investment plan until we know when you need access to those investments. Okay? And we say this all the time. Every dollar in your portfolio has a job. There is a purpose to money. Okay? What is the purpose of money? The purpose of money is to what? Spend it.
Right.
Enjoy it. Go do something with it. Right? The reason we work, the reason we save all this money is so we have money in retirement to go do what? Live.
I'm not saving and investing my personal money to get to a number to impress somebody.
Yep.
That's not the purpose of this. It's so that I have the ability to do what I want to do. to spend on the things that I want to spend, the things that bring me joy. That's
and
why
you
I'm
could
doing
say
this,
you
right?
can throw out the term financial freedom and peace of mind, and you can throw out all those different. Okay, those are fun topics and those are fun taglines. Great. At the end of the day, you need money so you can spend it, so you can go do things that you want to do.
Right.
It does give you freedom. Money gives you freedom, but the purpose of that money, which allows you to have the freedom, is you need the ability to be able to spend it. So our job when we're creating an income plan is to figure out when you want to spend your money.
Right.
Okay, how much money do you need to live your lifestyle? Okay, and then we figure out, okay, well, you're going to need this amount of money over the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, literally all the way down the line for the next 30 years, right? If the average retirement lasts, it's 18 years actually is the average retirement, but I mean, typically we're building retirement plans that are going to last 25, 30 years. At least that's the intent, right? Because what are most people afraid of in retirement? Running out of money, right? It's not death.
No, it's not.
They're not afraid of dying. They're afraid of running out of money.
You know you're eventually going to die. You don't know when.
Yeah. So,
but you know it's going to happen. Right? So.
But that's the whole purpose of the income plan, is to ensure, okay, how do we devise an income plan that you are not going to outlive? From there, then we can figure out the investment side. And not to make it sound trite, but it's relatively simple at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, this is money that you don't need for 10, 15 years. It's going to get invested this way.
This way, right.
If you need it in the next 5 years, it's going here. If you need it in 5 to 10 years, it's going here, right? It's really, at that point, it's just a matter of chopping up and saying, okay, here, here, and here. It's, then it's far easier to figure out the investment piece once we have the income plan. But you can't do anything until you have the income plan done and complete, which is why I always say investments are secondary from planning. Planning is primary. Investments are secondary. Can't talk investments until we talk about income planning.
My father-in-law, God rest his soul, they are a family that never shares personal information with family. And people that are listening are probably going, oh, yeah, of course. And other families are going, why wouldn't you do that? My family shares everything. Sometimes I wish they wouldn't. It's like, too much information, right? Yeah. But they were very private. And my father-in-law was a great man. I loved him. I really did. But he came to me one time and he said, I would like your opinion on what I should do with a long-term care policy that we have, right? I said, okay. And he said, it's up for renewal. I've got to pay the premium again. It's expensive. Should I keep it? I said, I don't know. Right? And he said, well, isn't that your job to know? And I said, well, it is, but you're not giving me all the information that I need. And he said, whoa, okay, what else do you need to know? Everything. I got to know the whole picture. Otherwise, I'm not giving you the best advice. I don't know if what I'm telling you is correct or not. And here's what I mean by this. And I told him, I said, okay, if I knew your investment picture, if I knew the amount of money that you are receiving from Social Security and the amount of money that you're spending, right? If there are any debts at this point in time, which I'm sure there's not, but if there are, I got to have that whole picture so that I can do exactly what you're talking about. I can make sure the money is invested in the way based on when I'm going to use it. Okay, I know that a long-term care situation is usually not that 17-year window that I was talking about with the client that came in earlier this week. I can kind of budget and say, okay, at this point in time, you're going to have an expenditure of this amount of money in a worst case scenario, right? If you end up needing that long-term care. Okay. Can you cash flow it? Because if you can, why in the world would you want to spend that kind of money on insurance that you don't have a need of? Well, okay. And I told him all that. And he said, well, you know what? Well, maybe I would rather have the insurance and leave that money behind. I said, great. I benefit, but that's not the purpose of this. The purpose is to benefit you, not me.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, Kathy and I we're not going to tell you, please don't give us money.
Well, what's happening now is in his mind, he's justifying what he already bought.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's what he ended up doing.
Yeah.
Right? And he ended up renewing it. He is no longer with us. He never used it. Right? Was it a waste of money? I don't know. Right? Because it did. It was also on my mother-in-law, who's still very much living. I don't know if it was a waste of money or not. I won't know that answer until we get to what we jokingly call end of plan, which is translation, that's when you die, right?
Yeah.
Once again, you can't you can't do a good plan unless you know the whole picture. And unfortunately, most advisors, most clients don't even ask for the whole picture. They get stuck in that investment side, or they get stuck in that one concern they had about should I get a trust or is a will sufficient? It's just part of the picture.
So that story leads me to an interesting story, because you talked about that symposium that we went to earlier this week. Shout out to First Trust, by the way.
Absolutely.
They're a fantastic partner. But it was interesting because at one point, and we hear a lot about the generational wealth transfer, and we probably need to do more of an episode on that. I think I did one maybe a year ago about that. But actually, those numbers have been updated, and they're assuming, or they're actually expecting, that the generational wealth transfer that's going to happen from boomers to, Gen X and millennials is even bigger than they were predicting over the last couple of years. I mean, it's multi-trillion, like $40 trillion, right? It's a massive amount of money that's going to change hands. Problem is, and they were saying the problem is that the boomers are living too long right now. That's why it hasn't.
Boomers would say
that's why it hasn't.
Not true.
That's why it hasn't happened yet. But it was interesting because and we talk about this all the time. Bring your kids into the plan, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And at the symposium, they were talking about making sure that you're incorporating kids into the plan, and that way you can continue the wealth transfer and make sure that the wealth transfer happens efficiently and smoothly, which of course we try to do. It was hilarious because we're all thinking the same thing in the room. And the guy next to me leaned over, and I did not know this other advisor from Adam. He's a nice guy. I talked to him at the dinner. It was a fun guy to sit next to. But he leaned over and said, well, if these damn boomers would let their kids know how much money they had and actually talk to them about some of this stuff, then maybe we could include the kids in the conversation. Right. And I'm laughing because that's very true. And that's exactly what you exactly what you were just talking about. Obviously, he said it probably a little more crudely than maybe I would to a client directly to their face. But there is a ton of truth in that. Yep. It's a very old school mentality. You don't talk to your kids about money. It's weird because I'm in this business, so I know what my parents have, and I know, it's different for me, but for most people, it's such a taboo topic to bring up with your kids, and you don't want your kids knowing how much you have because you don't want them expecting that when you pass away. Right. But the reality is, if they're not expecting that when you pass away, they're not prepared for it when you pass away, and that's usually when wealth is lost.
Yep, exactly right.
And that transfer was not done efficiently, and they were not prepared for the transfer of wealth that they inevitably received. And every day, all the time, you're hearing all these stories about the record number of 401k millionaires. There's more money in 401ks, and markets hitting all-time highs, and actually it was a couple of weeks ago, not so much right now. We're down, we're maybe at the start of a correction here, some profit taking, I guess, if you will, but that's besides the point. The point is there's a lot of money out there that hasn't changed hands yet, and a lot of people that are not talking to their kids about it. Yeah. And no matter how many times we beat that drum to speak with your kids, about your wealth and about what they're going to receive one day, that's a huge, huge part of the planning process as well.
I want to talk about talking to your kids about money. And we did an episode on how do we learn about money and investments. And we talked about how to teach your kids. When we say kids, we're not talking about your children. Yeah. I'm not going to tell my 6-year-old how much money I make.
We're talking about fully grown adults.
Right. We're talking about grown adults. And I was thinking as you were saying that, okay, so let me take my personal situation where my in-laws, one of them is now gone. The other one is still alive. Okay. I genuinely have no idea what's there. Not a clue. I suspect
the same way,
they were fairly well off because they were good savers, but I have no idea, right? I do know this. The tax bomb is going to hit me at some point in time, and I'm going to have to react. I've told many times this. We need to do something about this. My wife has brought it up. I mean, digging heels in like you cannot imagine. Now, on the other side of the family, my mom's gone. Dad's still very much alive. I manage all of his stuff. I know exactly what he's got. And I know that we have positioned it, and I've had the conversation with him and with my sisters, so that, assuming that he passes away before he runs out of money, we've talked about spendthrifts, that it's going to minimize the tax situation that the inheritance creates. We've actually done that work. Okay, so I've got 2 sons. Next month, when both of them have their birthdays 5 days apart, welcome to December in my house, I will now have legally 2 adults in the house. They do not know what I make. They don't know what our investments are because they don't need to yet. But make no mistake, there will come a point in time, let's call it 10, 15 years out, I'm going to start showing them because they need to know. They need to know what happens if something happens to me and mom, right?
Yep.
So we're not, when we say kids, we are talking about adult kids. I think each family is uniquely different in when do we need to have this conversation. But if you're waiting until the last minute, you know, okay, I'm going to die tomorrow afternoon because I know everything's shutting down, I'm in the hospital, I better tell them. That's not what we're talking about. It needs to be much earlier so it's involved in part of their plan as well.
Well, even conversations I have with my clients, it's interesting because, you know, 50, 60-year-old clients, mid-60s, right? And, you know, their parents are in their 80s and 90s. And, you know, we'll go through the plan and then they'll kind of throw out maybe kind of sheepishly, honestly, but it's like, well, we might be getting an inheritance at some point. And I'm like, well, okay. So what kind of health are your parents in? You know, when are you expecting kind of your inheritance? Is something going on I need to know about? Well, no, nothing big, but like I might be getting an inheritance one day. And I'm like, oh, do you know how much?
Right.
No,
Is it tax qualified?
No, not really. I'm like, do you know what kind of accounts? Do you know how you're going to be receiving your inheritance? No, not really. Well, if you can find that out, that makes my job a lot easier trying to give you some advice because we're doing all these things based upon what you have. But if we know for a fact that you're going to be getting other sources or other investments that you're going to be inheriting soon, depending upon the way that you inherit those, that could have a pretty big impact on the decisions that we're making today, right? But to your point, like I'm sitting here, you know, so many times I've tried to get it out of them and they just won't tell me.
Yeah.
They just won't tell me anything.
And the inheritance is a relative word too, right? Well, mom and dad are loaded. So when they're gone, we're going to have a big inheritance. Define loaded. Because you and I have both had this conversation many times with people. You will have people come in and they are worth $2, $3, $4, $5 million in investable assets. And they are terrified they're going to run out of money, right? I've also had people come in and I've sat down and talked to them and I look at it and they are well under $100,000 and they act like they just won the Powerball.
I'm retiring early.
Yeah, I've got plenty. And it's like, okay, this is a very relative term. So when you say mom and dad are loaded, so we're going to inherit, okay.
Well, okay, they might be loaded, but are you one of 5 kids?
Okay, yeah, I was good ready to go there. So how many people are going to inherit, right? You just said it. What kind of accounts are we dealing with? What kind of taxes are we dealing with? Because if you think that the government's not going to get what they believe belongs to them, you're naive, right? They're just really, really good at that. So once again, this all goes back to having a good financial plan. Because if you've got a good plan, then when life throws these different things at that, you can adapt, just like you did with the client that lost their job this week. You look like you're ready to talk about bourbon.
That's a pretty good place to transition to talking shop a little bit around this bourbon. What are your thoughts?
I like it a lot better than what I remember from when I got this bottle a couple of years ago.
My first drink, I hated it.
Yep. Is it growing on you?
I wouldn't say it's growing on me. I would never pay what you you said it's worth.
And I said that up front. I would never pay what it's going for now.
100% not worth $160 retail. It's not worth half of that. It's not worth. I would never buy it. To be perfectly blunt, it's okay. The more I drink, the better it tastes. Right.
Right.
It's gotten a little bit better. I could definitely taste the rum. I could taste the rum. I could taste the rye. I'm not a rye guy, but there are ryes I like, you know. But this is not. I wouldn't classify this as one.
I could not taste the rum at all at first. All I tasted was, wow, this is hot.
It was and
I was thinking,
my first drink was very hot, and it was only 107.
This is 107 proof, so this is not way up there. That was that rye. And it dawned on me, I thought, I can't remember what the proof was, but it was just a little bit over 100. This is really spicy in flavor, right?
Yeah.
Now, when I started putting a little bit of water in it, if you watched, I think I've put in 3 or 4 drops at this point in time. Now's when the rum started coming out.
Yeah, you taste the rum. You don't taste it on that first sip.
No, I didn't get any rum at first. All I got was all that rye. There was just so much of it. To your point, it's getting better. The more I drink, the more I like. Okay, well, I mean, in theory, if you drink enough of it, you won't even care. I haven't had that much, obviously. The taste is growing on me. Would it be my first choice?
No.
Not a chance.
I'd never buy it.
I had a friend of mine over to my house last night to talk about a charity that both of us are involved with. And we were trying to do some planning, and we were sitting in my bar downstairs. And I said, what do you want? He said, well, what can I have? And I said, you know what? The bar's open. I mean, it's here to share. Tell me what you want. He went, okay, can I have some of that? Yeah. Well, what he picked was really good stuff. So it made you want to start trying other things. If the first thing that I tasted with this, this would probably be the last thing that I tasted if I thought everything tasted like this.
Yeah.
You know, is that a fair way to describe it? Whereas if I had already tasted some other things, this might kick in. I would like to try this in a cocktail. I would like to see what happens when you mix this with some other things, be it the sugars or the fruits, all the other things that you might put into a cocktails, because this might be good. Mm-hmm. First thing that pops into my head would be some type of wintry drink, right? Like maple old fashions or something like that, because that rum might really give it something. And something that high rye would be appropriate, right? Like in an old fashioned.
You're being generous.
I'm trying to find a way to make what is effectively a $160 bottle useful.
You're nicer than me.
How's that?
You're nicer than me.
I am always nicer than you are.
It's
you're a little bit more blunt.
I mean, you know, I'm drinking it, right? It's fine. It's not like it's not drinkable. And you know, like I said, that once you got past the first couple tastes, it did get better. It did grow. It grew on me, as it were.
And I think part of that is just your palate gets a little
your palate's
bit numb
getting
from the alcohol.
But it's not nearly good enough to where I would ever go buy this.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. I hate to say that because Bardstown makes some fantastic stuff.
Yeah.
On my bar, right next to this bottle, very similar looking label, is some Bardstown Goose Island. Now, if you know anything about Goose Island, that is a beer brewery up in the Chicago area. And they are taking their used casks from Bardstown, and they're shipping them up to Chicago. And they're aging their Goose Island beer, and they're giving it, you know, if you've ever had their bourbon finished beer, it's actually really good.
I've not. Yeah.
If you like that kind of beer and you like the bourbon finishing on it, which I usually do, it's really good. Mm-hmm. And then they are taking the same casks and sending them back to Bardstown, and then they're refinishing the bourbon in them. So now the bourbon picks up the beer flavor, right? It is outstanding. Now, it's not something I would want all the time. It's an unusual flavor, but I've enjoyed that bottle. It's pricey. It's another one that is easily found, usually right next to this one. But that one's one that's like, okay, this is probably more money I want to spend, but I'm not going to be mad at myself for spending the money on this one because I am actually going to enjoy it.
Well, bring that one in next time.
We can arrange that. Okay,
because that one sounds a lot better than this one.
I don't want to beat up on Bardstown because we didn't like this one. They have so many different things that they do.
Like I said, I've only had.
Most of them are really good.
I've only had, I think, one Bardstown before, and it was good. I remember liking it. I don't even remember which one it was. So yeah, no, by no means. And I've only heard pretty much good things about Bardstown. So
the only thing that all of the Bardstown bourbon stuff has in common is the shape of the bottle. All of their bottles look like that. They put little pictures on the back of it sometimes. The labels are all basically the same, although they change the colors and the information that's on them. Other than that, man, what's inside that bottle varies pretty wildly at Bardstown, which is one of the things that I think is most attractive about them. So,
well, that's a pretty good place to wrap up.
I think so.
So, thanks for joining us for this edition. First and foremost, I want to say we've had a number of new folks come in that are saying that they have heard us on this podcast, and so we greatly appreciate the opportunity to speak with any of you all about any of the questions that you may have. as it relates to planning, income, investments, or any of the other topics that we briefly touched upon today. We would love to discuss those with you in any more detail or as much detail as you would like. So thanks for joining us. On behalf of Chris and Family Wealth Planning, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.